When a person goes missing, investigators dig into every aspect of their lives, looking for any clues or reasons as to why the person disappeared. Sometimes people are taken against their will, and other times there are more shocking explanations behind these bizarre missing person cases. Number 5. The first case of a missing person found alive later is a breaking news story that is currently emerging, and the story was broken less than 24 hours before the writing of this video. According to news reports, an unidentified hiker, who we will refer to as Mr. X, was found safe and well after disappearing while hiking up the La Soufriere volcano in St. Vincent. Each year, hundreds of people go missing while out in the wilderness, but luckily for Mr. X, he was one of the few that were found alive. On May 17, 2022, Mr. X and a group of other hikers made their way up the mountain in a hike that was described as long and challenging. Most people hike along the way due to the trail being over 10.9 kilometers high and at an elevation of over 1,000 meters. La Soufriere is also classed as an active volcano, and it erupted as recently as December of 2020. With this being said, hikers take their lives into their own hands when choosing to walk this trail. During the hike, Mr. X left the group that he was hiking with and decided to go alone. After this, the group did not see him again, and after failing to contact him, they reported him missing. Parts of the trail are still damaged from the 2020 eruptions, and people began to fear the worst. As darkness fell, investigators, search and rescue volunteers, and people who had been hiking with Mr. X made their way back up the volcano to look for him. The group battled through the darkness, doing their best to cover every square inch possible. As well as it being dark outside, the searchers had to battle with low visibility, and sometimes the visibility can be as low as 20 feet. The search for the missing hiker continued, and at around 4 a.m., the group made a discovery. Mr. X had fallen and lost consciousness while descending the 4,000-foot volcano. Luckily, his injuries were not serious, and the search crews managed to find him in time. After he was discovered safely, medical crews and medical helicopters were brought in to airlift the man to safety, as the area in which he had fallen was surrounded by large drops. Mr. X was taken to the nearest hospital and is now receiving medical treatment for his injuries. The authorities have kept the trail closed and are advising other hikers to stay away from the volcano. Luckily, Mr. X was only a missing person for a short while, and thanks to the efforts of volunteers and experts, he's been returned home safely. Number 4. When 19-year-old Madeline Allen's parents received a bizarre text that said "I love you" on the morning of December 14, 2021, they knew that something was very wrong. Madeline was your typical college student who was studying at the Snow College in Utah, and her family knew that while she still loved them, her time and attention would now be focused on her studies. So when this bizarre text came through, they immediately called the authorities. They weren't the only ones to contact the authorities though, and Madeline's roommates at Snow College had also filed a report after she failed to return to her dorm room. Investigators took the report seriously, and within hours, the Snow College dorm room that Madeline shared was now swarming with officers. Officers poured through the evidence and found CCTV of Madeline leaving the dorm on December 13, 2021 at 9:22 p.m., wearing a white jacket and carrying a white plastic bag. Investigators began to retrace her last movements and decided to look through her phone records. Incredibly, her phone was still active and last pinged from a tower in Loa, Utah, over 87 miles from the college. Investigators worked with Madeline's cell phone provider to obtain more location data, while other teams canvassed the university and the area in which her phone last pinged. While the investigation was ongoing, other students at Snow College were left on edge, wondering whether this was a targeted attack. Madeline's parents waited day in and day out for any news about their daughter. Madeline's friends and those at Snow College held a candlelit vigil praying for her safe return. But as the days went on, hope began to fade. Almost 5 days had passed without any progress in Madeline's case. But just when hopes were beginning to fade, a miracle happened. Investigators had been working tirelessly behind the scenes to find Madeleine, and on December 18th, they'd finally made a huge breakthrough. The investigation led them to the home of 39-year-old Brent Brown of Loa, Utah. On December 18th, 2021, police officers visited Brown to question him about Madeleine's disappearance. As they entered the home that he lived in, which was owned by his parents, they saw Madeleine's student ID sitting in plain sight. This was the break they needed, and after contacting Brown's parents, they were permitted to search the entire house. As officers entered the basement, they made a discovery that would shock them. Cold, scared, and covered in coal dust was 19-year-old Madeleine. She explained to officers that for the last 5 days, Brown had held her hostage in the basement and had repeatedly assaulted her. Madeleine was rescued and taken to the nearest hospital, where she was reunited with her parents. According to court documents, Madeleine and Brent had met up on the app Kik, with the two agreeing to meet up for a date on December 13th, 2021. This was when Brent ambushed Madeleine and drove her over 87 miles away to his parents' home in Loa. When addressed in court, Brent alleged that the entire thing was consensual and that Madeleine had agreed to everything, but Madeleine has denied those claims. Brent is currently awaiting trial and faces 6 felony charges. In December of 2021, just days after he was arrested and arraigned, Brent asked the judge if he could be granted bail so that he could spend Christmas with his family and children. Thankfully, the judge denied bail, and Brent is awaiting his next court hearing. Madeleine is now spending time with her family, healing and recovering from her missing person ordeal. Number 3. For over 3 years, the parents of 19-year-old Connor Jack Oswald never gave up looking for their son. His mother, Suzanne Flint, told the Associated Press, quote, "I never stopped looking for him. There wasn't a day I wasn't searching for him in some form or fashion. Any hints at something that remotely resembled him, we would follow up on." On May 23rd, 2019, Connor Jack left his home in Clear Lake, California, taking nothing but his cat with him. Connor Jack had been diagnosed with autism many years earlier, and his parents said that he had a habit of running away for short periods of time. According to the NCMEC, Connor Jack left his family home on May 23rd, 2019, after getting into an argument with his mother because she took his phone away. Other reports indicate that Suzanne was in the kitchen cooking quesadillas, and when she turned around to call to Connor Jack for lunch, he was nowhere to be found. The exact circumstances of Connor Jack's disappearance are still being investigated by authorities. However, when Connor Jack failed to return home, his parents reported him to the police. After taking the report, the Clear Lake police opened their investigation and began looking for Connor Jack, but the trail quickly ran cold. With few leads to work with, the investigation was at a standstill, but Connor Jack's family continued to be the driving force behind the search for him, working with charities and organizations that were dedicated to bringing awareness to missing person cases, such as Connor Jack's. 2019 slowly turned into 2020, and there was still no news about their son. Still, Connor Jack's family never gave up, but as the years continued to roll on, their hope began to dwindle. In April of 2022, Connor Jack's family received a phone call that would change their lives and bring about a stunning conclusion to a baffling missing person case. According to reports, on April 9th, the Summit County Sheriff's Office responded to a call about a man sleeping outside of a shop in Jeremy Ranch, Utah. The officers responded to the call and noticed that the man bore a striking resemblance to the missing 19-year-old. Officers were able to get Connor Jack into the warmth and into the safety of their police car, and a fingerprint scan showed that he had a previous warrant in Nevada. The officers who had picked up Connor Jack felt that something wasn't right and continued digging until they came across his missing person poster. Many phone calls later, Connor Jack's family were informed that their missing son had been found safe and well almost 3 years after he had disappeared from their home. It's not clear how Connor Jack ended up in Utah or what he had been doing in Nevada. Suzanne, Connor Jack's mother, confirmed his identity thanks to a unique birthmark after she and Connor Jack's stepfather had made a 700-mile drive from California to Utah. Social workers are now working with Connor Jack to figure out what happened while he was missing. Suzanne Flint, his mother, addressed the media saying, quote, "We're just grateful. He's alive and we have our son back." Number 2. Lithuanian Ricardas Puisis mysteriously disappeared from England in 2015, never to be seen or heard from again. His family were devastated, and from their homes in Lithuania, Germany, and Ireland, they desperately tried to assist the British police in any way possible. As the missing person investigation progressed, the case took a shocking turn when a man was arrested in connection with Ricardas's disappearance, with investigators believing that the man had taken Ricardas's life. Unfortunately, the police did not have enough evidence to move forward with the conviction, and Ricardas's case turned cold. All police knew was that Ricardas was last seen leaving his job at the Nightlier Leak Company on September 26, 2015, and after that, he had simply vanished into thin air. Several lines of inquiry led them to foul play. However, these leads quickly fizzled out. With no leads to follow, the investigation fell silent. That was until 2018, when Ricardas's missing person case would take yet another shocking turn. In August of 2018, the police were made aware of a Facebook account that had been created under the name of Ricardas Puisis. His family and friends believed that the account did in fact belong to the missing man, but was unable to gather any more information from him. The account had also posted new photographs of Ricardas, which his family later confirmed was in fact him. Now, both the police and his family believed that he was alive, but the question was, where was he? Using data obtained from the Facebook profile, the police were able to establish that whoever was using the account was just 20 miles away from where Ricardas was last seen. Again, the case grew quiet. That was until July of 2020, when the police made yet another incredible discovery. As they were searching the area looking for any sign of the missing man, they came across a campsite that had been well hidden and concealed. Inside the tent, investigators found none other than Ricardas Puisis, who had been missing for over 1,600 days. Ricardas told investigators that he had disappeared after being attacked on September 26, 2015, telling them, quote, "I turned around to the door and ran. I didn't know where to go. I turned left and there was a little park. I went into the park and hid in the bushes, and then I lived in the woods for 5 years. I found a tent, somewhere to sleep that someone had left behind, and I was there all winter. Then I found that place in the woods and I stayed there. I was scared of being found again." Ricardas would tell investigators that men from his work had taken his phone, passport, and other belongings, essentially trapping him. When he was attacked, he knew that he had to get away as he didn't have any friends or family in the UK. He fled into the woods and lived rough until he was discovered. Ricardas has now been referred to services in the UK, and the police are continuing to work with him. Number 1. In 2014, Danish butcher Carl Drusen decided to move to Thailand after accepting a job at a restaurant out there. For Carl, this was the move of his dreams, and he had spent many months holidaying in Thailand and had fallen in love with the idea of living out there permanently. When Carl first settled into his new life in Thailand, everything started perfectly. He became a fixture in the Danish community within Thailand and was flourishing in his new position in the kitchen of a restaurant. But as the months went on, things slowly began to slip away from Carl. He would party for days at a time, which led him to miss shifts at work and get into disagreements with his boss. The final blow came when Carl's boss terminated his contract, sending Carl into a dark spiral. In the months before he had lost his job, Carl had started gambling away large amounts of money, and with the loss of his job, he knew he wouldn't be able to pay his debts. On December 30th, 2015, one of Carl's friends and colleagues at the restaurant went to his house to collect the keys to the restaurant, severing their business relationship. This would be the last time that Carl Drusen was ever seen or heard from again. When Carl failed to make contact with his family, they reported him missing to the Thai authorities, who opened up an official investigation. Months slowly turned to years, and there were no leads. There was no activity on Carl's passport, and no records of Carl leaving Thailand and heading back to his home in Denmark. The trail had quickly gone cold, and Carl's girlfriend would periodically contact Thomas to ask him for money, saying that she was with Carl. She never let Thomas speak to his friend, and the messages were cryptic and short. Carl's family and friends back in Denmark also contacted the Danish authorities to make them aware of his disappearance. For almost 6 years, the disappearance of Carl Drusen lay dormant. That was until December of 2021, when the Nordic police made a startling announcement. They announced that Carl Drusen, who had been listed as a missing person since 2015, had been found alive many years later. According to reports, the police department has said that they will not yet comment on the circumstances surrounding his disappearance. Both countries are working together to uncover the truth behind Carl's disappearance, and Carl will likely be deported back to his native country of Denmark after overstaying his visa. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.